Here we go. All right, welcome to another episode of Panakal Podcast for Geeks, a show about good friends hanging out, talking about the things we all love. And I'm pretty sure I didn't say that right, but that's okay.
I think you got it. You got it
Someday I'll
well
get it
enough.
right. Someday. Our guest today is Jason Engle. You all know my co-host Andrew. I cannot, for the life of me, in Discord figure out how to rotate these windows. Like I would
Are they
prefer our
stacked
guests.
vertically for you?
So it's you and me are on top. You and I are on top, and Jason's down. So like this has happened several times. We have guests on. So when I'm looking at Jason to talk to him, it looks like I'm sleeping, right? Like
Oh,
my
right.
eyes, and I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tried to leave the call and come back in, and all it did was switch Andrew and me. And like I wish there was a way to like say that this specific window should be at the top, which we
As
should
far as I
figure out.
know, they only switch it between either you can focus on whoever's talking, which gets weird when there's crosstalk because all of a sudden the window starts going wild,
Right.
or
You
it'll
don't
just
want
be
that.
like everyone's all equal kind of thing. And I don't know how to switch it from that.
I
So I
will
have it
resolve this
where
mystery.
Jason's underneath me and you're above me, and I'm like right in the middle.
You
I'm
got
like
it
a
vertically?
Yeah, vertical tier. I popped it out and it decided
Oh.
to go vertical.
Yeah, that
Very
won't look good. The video's recording my window, so that would look weird.
Yeah, no,
Thank
you
God
don't
we're
wanna
not
do
recording your window.
that.
So we thought
Yeah.
for this episode we talk a little bit about doing conventions and running sales, and before we
Since
do
you
that,
both
I want nobody
are
to worry about that
very
printer
good
that's
at it.
balanced behind Jason. It's not going to dump out on his head.
And
Though
several feet away from me. It's totally safe.
It looks super scary on film. I was like, that thing's gonna fall. I don't have anything balanced like that.
You don't have any precarious balance?
I don't have any
I live on
shelves.
the edge, man. I like to take risks. That's a life
That's
in
because
art.
you're melting in that Florida heat, man.
Oh.
How hot was it there when your AC died?
I'm not actually sure because I couldn't think right or read
Mhm.
numbers. It was deeply unpleasant. That's all I remember.
I mean, it was like 95 here yesterday, and anytime I had to step outside, I was like, it's disgusting out here.
Yeah.
Thank God the AC is still working. Like, coming back in was like, I had by like 3 or 4 trips out that door, I had a headache. I was like, I was thinking about you, like, it's got to be miserable over there.
Especially because it's like inside without the AC, the house gets humid.
I mean,
as well
I
around
took the
here.
family to this museum right down the street. My sister-in-law said, hey, here's a funny story. My sister-in-law said it was a Stan Lee exhibit forever. So I'm like, I like Stan Lee. I really want to see this exhibit and learn a bit more about him. As the day is approaching, she messages
Sounds
me
cool.
and she's like, I messed up. It's actually Alex Ross, which is still cool.
But yeah, that's actually
totally
I would
not
think it's
Stan
better
Lee.
for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a weirdly acceptable mistake,
Yeah.
but not the same. Very
I
different.
mean, it could have been worse. It could have been like, Stan Leonard, the plumber of, Lombard or something.
Was like Alex Ross's original art at this
Yeah,
exhibit?
so I posted a bunch
Oh.
in our Discord because it's all like, so it's all Marvel stuff. None of his DC stuff was there. And I talked to the lady who's curating it. I said, "Hey, is there an opportunity for like a DC one to show up next? Because I know there's zero DC stuff in there. It's all Marvel." And she said,
I think he's not been doing DC for a minute.
"I
He's been
thought some of the
doing
Kingdom
Marvel.
Come stuff would be there,
Yeah.
But apparently the people that own that work, it's like they're the ones who like donated it for the show, and it's all like Marvel stuff. It was stuff from the Earth X and then Marvelocity it was called. So it was like all these like posters, and there was like a bunch of stuff I have never seen there. Again, check the group because I posted like there was like a Reed Richards that I've never seen. There was a Doctor Strange that I haven't seen in a minute. There's some originals in there.
How long ago was this exhibit? Sorry.
This was just this afternoon. I just went there.
Just this afternoon. So okay, so in that case, was it some of his inked Fantastic Four?
It had like some of his pencil sketches. They showed like his preliminary sketches, which are tiny, by the way. They're like literally like not even like 4x4, and then you see the big image next to it. So I was trying to figure out like some of the artists that I've mentored under, like they will make a tiny sketch, then they'll blow it up, right? And then they'll either use graphite to transfer it to board, or they'll glue it down and paint directly on top of it. So I'm curious to like if he actually redrew the whole thing or not, because he does. Because some of the process is there, but not all of it.
he likes to I don't think he likes to do a lot of like I don't think he likes to do a lot of like the paste
Yeah, I
board,
think he
like
just
pasting onto the
redraws
board.
it.
I think he does just redraw because he just likes the process. But I do know like he this Fantastic Four book he did recently, uh it's like the first time in a really, really long time he decided to be like, I'm not gonna paint it, I'm just gonna ink it and
Oh no,
digitally
none of that
color it.
was there.
But the interesting thing though, and I kind of this is why I want to see his like inked pages because I use the quotes because like he inked it in black gouache instead of India ink, so that
Oh,
way he could do
I
like
mean,
different
everything
featherings
hanging
and
in
all
here
that.
was in gouache. There was no.
Yeah, no,
I
that
could have sworn he did
that's his
stuff in
medium.
oils. It's all gouache,
He
100%.
used to do oils. He's like a it's like a Paulo Rivera kind of thing. Like he did oils very, very early on, and then he
Mm,
was like, ah, fuck it,
right,
gouache,
but I
because it
mean,
just
it's a
takes
good lead in
forever.
for San Diego Comic Con here because he was there.
Yeah,
He's got the biggest booth I've ever seen for an artist. It's double
Oh
two
yeah,
stories,
yeah.
it's
and
So
the
like,
crazy.
lady, you can't go upstairs. They said in upstairs is invite only.
right, yeah. So
I was like, all
time of
right.
this
It's so
recording,
cool.
do you
I tried to
follow?
walk up the stairs, and they were just like, "Where are you going, sir?" I'm like,
My booth
I,
is mostly just a special place that you can't go unless you're cool enough.
Right.
right."
That's all my booth is. It doesn't sell anything. It
That
just
that
So
that's what you want to
the bottom
aspire
is
to.
all it's still originals, right? But it's got a mixed bag of originals, books, and posters that you can buy at the show. And then upstairs,
oh
I
okay.
heard is where he's got original. It's basically all the main originals are upstairs, and it's basically if you're a collector, you can go up there and look at them. At least that's what I was being told. I don't
That's
know
pretty
what's
cool.
up there because I didn't get up there. Like this lady
Mhm.
was she was on my case so quick. I was just like, I don't know what's happening. Stop yelling at me. Like I was like, I thought I can walk upstairs. There's stairs here. It's part of the booth.
Yeah,
She's
I
like,
would
no.
love to see some Alex Ross originals. They
I mean, the
or
ones I
some
saw
actually
today were
they
pretty
pretty
legit. Like I
awesome.
had to I was able to look at them pretty close because there's one with Iron Man fighting Namor,
Hmm.
and there's a part where like they show him like holding up his arm and like there's like traces of light coming off of it. And I'm like, did he just like leave that area white? But if you look really close, you can see
No,
like the
no,
gouache
he
streaks.
probably yeah airbrushed it or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was just like, that's cool. So, but he was
yeah.
I
The
didn't see a lot of
the
what was
closest I've
that?
ever seen his work was there's always been like some that crop up on heritage auctions. And
Sure.
like with heritage auctions, you can zoom in like super close. They usually have pretty high res scans and everything. And yeah, you look through those. It's like he builds it up in a lot of layers, like very little like direct painting.
I mean,
And
he's from here, right? He's from
man,
Chicago.
yeah, I think he is.
He signed my friend Keith. I go to Keith, this place called Keith's Comics. I've been going there since I was like 15, and he's been there a bunch of times to sign. And he's one of those rare artists. I see Mike Mignola do this too at shows where they'll just sign like stacks, right? Like like Jason, if someone came by with some of your like magic cards or whatever, and like, can you sign 50 of these? You'd be like, I don't know. You might sign them all, right? I might be like, bro, can you come
So
back later and I'll have
yeah,
them
I
signed
mean
for you?
they come by with like 200 or 300 of them, dude, and that's why I charge for
Yeah.
signatures now
So
because I
these guys,
used to do it for free, and it was like, yeah, I'm going to spend an hour and a half doing this for some guy,
right?
and
They're
then
just gonna
never see him
flip
again.
it. Yeah.
They would
And
come by
exactly,
with
they just
like
go on
two to
eBay
three
after, so it's
hundred.
like, say what?
They would come by with 200 to 300 cards.
Yeah,
Well, they
they're
do now because my cards are better. Back then, it was
Right.
like 50 to 100 cards, but it was still
No,
enough to
that's
like
still insane. That's a
really
huge
be a
amount.
problem. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I've seen like so Ross would sign like these giant stacks of comics. I remember I was talking to him and I was just like, why don't you just say minimum three? Like Jim Lee, I remember seeing him. He'd be like minimum. They would do this thing where they say you can ask for a sketch or you can have three comics signed until Jim was done doing sketches. At some point, if you're like not in the right spot in that line, he'd be like,
Not
we're
out.
down to comics only, and he would only sign three because he wanted to move that line along. And Ross was like, it's not a big deal. He bought the
It's
comics. He's
interesting
here.
that I was gonna say it's interesting that he does it like at the show. I know like Brian Stelfreeze, he has an assistant that just says like, "Hey, he's gonna be at this show. Get your orders in because we're not
Okay.
taking them at the show. But
yeah,
you tell us now, we will get you on the list, and he will finish it
exactly.
when he can." It,
That's the way to do it. Like
yeah,
that's how at C22 Sean Gordon Murphy was there and they capped it, right? They were like, "Do you want a sketch? This is the time limit." Like they didn't do a sketch. They did I forget what they called it. Sketch over. It was like a quick Like I think I showed you my CGC comic. It was like a quick. This was just a quick drawing, like a face,
A
but
remark.
from a remark. That's what it was. But he gave me a little extra on mine. Because my friend Cody works for CBCG, whatever the grading company is. So he was just like, "Hey, can you give my friend Alan a little more than a remark?" So
Right.
occasionally you get a hookup, but I forgot where I was going with
So
that.
I was gonna say, like, so time of this recording, you finished San Diego not too long ago. Jason, have you finished a show recently, or are you like in between shows?
I'm
Both
in
have
between
like Gen
shows. Yeah, yeah. Last one I did was a dream hack in Dallas, which was pretty cool, but that was a couple months ago.
Con. Okay.
Do you
Yeah.
like
Um,
So
Dallas?
yeah, it was a good show. Dallas is usually pretty good to me as a city. The I've never been to a dream hack before that one, so it was kind of interesting.
hmm,
Most of the shows I go to are either like a normal convention or a comic show or a game show or a magic based tournament where it's just
Right.
magic stuff and card players and tables and all that. So it's either one or the other. DreamHack is kind of both though. Only it's more video game focused, so it's almost more like PAX.
Yeah.
But then they also have magic stuff there as well, and it's got its big kind of area all to itself. But it was really interesting and really fun. I was very impressed by it. And I did really well.
I need to. I've been wanting to go back to shows in Dallas. I'm still ripe with what they try to pull with me with that
just don't do
seller's
Fan
license.
Expo.
Yeah, I mean, so apparently there's a fan expo here in Chicago the week after Gen Con.
Really?
Oh man,
And I was like, oh man, I don't know if I want to deal with them. It's just like they're really hard to deal with, and it's a week after, so I don't know if I want to do it. I'm taking a vacation after Gen Con. I can't between Gen Con and Dragon Con. If I don't take a vacation, I'm gonna show up and kill
in
everybody at Dragon
between,
Con. Yeah, I
yeah, it's
need a
gonna
break.
be
Like
Dragon Con's a lot. It's worth resting up for it,
yeah. I
honestly.
mean, even though Justin is at Otakon right now working. He worked day one today. He set up yesterday.
Mhm.
It's still like I like all day today. I've been like on top of like anything that's going on over there, right? Like any
Yeah,
issues, any
good.
cost changes, any. I've moved a bunch of those desk mats that I had made now without even.
Mhm.
I mean, they're not here yet. I won't have them till Gen Con maybe. So I said, take the pre-orders and I'll ship them out for free as soon as they come in. The hell was that sound?
What, you heard something outside your house?
Yeah, I think it's the guy's pickup truck, but it sounded like an
Uh,
explosion.
I mean,
Um,
you were telling us earlier off mic about how well like you have certain prints like move at those anime shows compared to like other shows.
right. So I noticed, and I started noticing this last year a little bit, and more so this year now because I just did ASIN and Otakon is an anime show, and I realized that the character pieces that don't normally move at um other shows like C2E2, Gen Con, maybe there's a mixed bag of people at Gen Con and Dragon Con, but it's very few that the character pieces move, but the landscapes move all day. But at these anime shows, everybody eats up the character pieces, and at first I was like, I don't get it, but I think it's because like you were talking about this, Jason, about how they can relate to the characters somehow from like the anime that they like watching, right? Or something about it that's jumping out to them, something they're relating to. Because like
Yeah,
my
yeah.
Tiger God
Big
piece,
sword.
he's
It's
a tiger with
basically
a big sword, and he cooks at these anime shows. He just sells out. Any other
mhm.
show, he's just kind of lingering.
it's the it's a very common problem with artists when we're trying to look at art that sells to fans. We misjudge it by looking at it from the wrong direction. We look at it purely through the eyes of someone who's been working on these properties and these characters. So we see it as people buying characters that they associate with things that they love, and that is sometimes what it is. But it's
Sure.
also archetypes that people love. Like they think of themselves as I'm a guy that likes uh, you know, uh, black knights in armor with big swords, and it's a combination of properties that they love that includes that kind of archetype. So they look for that in prints just as much as anything else. So it's very easy for us to identify it as just a character that is particularly popular, but we'll buy those same archetypes even in art that doesn't include brand specific material just because it's the things they like that are in that art. It
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily have to be connected to anything.
You notice that at all with like your work, Jason, depending on if it's more a video game show versus like a magic show versus like a general comic show?
I mean, it always varies a lot, really. I mean, with a lot of the work that I sell these days, it is more focused on magic. So 90% of the people that buy stuff from me at shows, that's what they're connecting with, and that's what they verbalize.
Mm.
And the people that don't, usually they just think it's a cool image or whatever. That's sometimes it's got archetypes that I can kind of identify what's going on there, but um, most of the time it's just that they recognize it from magic, and that's good enough for me most of the time too. So,
True.
Yeah, I mean, if they were, it's a good starting off point. They don't recognize my stuff for anything, so
But you got some hook in with the anime people.
the anime people,
well,
yeah. I mean, that's one of those things where like I rolled the dice and I was like, wow, because I had some bad ones. I mentioned that, like I've had some bad ones where I'm just like, well, let's just make Booth back and get out of here, and that's one of the few times I've left. There's only 2 times in my life I've ever let a show early, and one was Anime Midwest because it sucked and I wasn't making the sales, and then the other one was there was a place here called Pheasant Run. When I was starting out, I would just do any show. Anyone mentioned it, I'd be like, let's go check it out, right? Pheasant Run
mhm,
was it was here's local. It was in the middle of December, and my friend and I were like, or it was November, I believe, and we were like, it's cold and snowing outside, and it's a weekend show. It's literally Saturday, Sunday, or it's Saturday, Sunday, and we went there on Saturday. We set up, and we thought it's 2 days. I mean, the table was like $150, I think, and we're like, let's just see if we can make some money. And like we couldn't even hit $100. Like day one, we barely made any money. And as the
oh
day was
man,
closing out, there's weirdness happening everywhere. Like I remember at the end of the aisle, there were these 2 ladies doing. It looked like an '80s workout video. They were like, in like
Okay.
the tight clothes with like the suspenders and,
Right,
and,
right.
and like, or what do you call them, the leotards or whatever, and like the sweat
The
bracelets and
warmers.
all that.
Yep.
And I was like, are they filming something, or they were legit selling a video like that? And I was just like, we're done, breakdown, we're out of here.
this,
And
we don't belong here. Like,
I took it all down, and my friend, I remember my assistant Steph was helping me. He's like, "We coming back tomorrow?" I'm like, "Hell no!" Like we're out. And this blizzard, it was like snowing so hard outside. I was like, I just want to get back to the condo to play some video games. I'm
yeah,
done. But it's very rare that happens these days. Like I'm very, I do a little bit more of my homework before I go. And this is the
Yeah.
other thing we're talking about: how artists tend to buy. They go to these shows and only get into the artist alley spots, which is I think artist alley spots are fine if you're just testing the market to see like, will people like my work? Will I do well at this show? But at some point, like we were discussing before we went live, you have to buy a booth if you want to. Like artists are learning it this year at Gen Con, for example. A lot of artists are complaining they didn't get into the art show, but it's like they get thousands of applications for the art show, and the art show only has what,
like,
75 spots, 85
Not a whole
spots.
lot of spaces, right?
Yeah, and I
yeah,
believe I would have been on that list of people that would have gotten chopped, like out, because I've been there for almost 5 years, right? 5 years, maybe. Yeah, I mean, there are artists that have been there more than 10+ years who finally got the boot, and they're upset
yeah.
about it. But I'm like, it has to happen. It's just the way the show functions.
When it's a curated show or a juried show, you just never have a guarantee. Right?
Right,
It's the taste, and it's not necessarily even a set rule where they're like, oh, after so many years, we got to get rid of this guy. It's the people doing the judging. Maybe they just don't like your style or whatever, and
right,
maybe a couple more of the judges also agree with that. And I don't think they usually like even talk about it, together. They probably just vote separately and compile the votes together. But
right,
regardless, the point is that you have no guarantee when you're putting yourself in that position.
no,
Now, when you are getting started, it's very useful to be in the art show for years because you don't have a fan base, you don't know how to sell, you don't know how to build a booth, you don't know how to do any of what makes doing shows, tricky or
right,
even fun for that matter. But like you have to learn all that stuff. But at a certain point, so many artists that I know personally over the years, the vast majority of artists entirely in the business, they stop in that spot rather than trying to grow past it because it's very safe and it's financially much less risky, like
right.
much less risky. Most artist alleys or art shows are less than $1,000, And most real boots, at these shows are several $1,000s. So I mean,
Yes.
it's a huge difference in financial risk, and I understand why they don't want to take that leap, but you're putting yourself in a spot where, if a show really means that much to your income every year, um, you have to take it more seriously as a business, and you have to grow beyond that place in the business. So,
I 100% agree with that. Yeah. I mean, because that's what's happening right, and it's not like they're personally telling you they don't like you, they don't want you there. It's just so many new artists coming
well,
in.
in some cases, but yeah.
Sure. I mean, there's some people, yeah, that don't deserve to be
There's
there.
always a person that's an asshole somewhere
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
decides like, ah, you're on my shit list.
But you got to
But
learn through that.
you
Like,
can't do anything about that either.
some of our artists in our group right now are first time in Gen Con this year, and I see like
Mhm.
I'm in like a group chat with them, and they're all like going through their own personal levels of stress, like
yeah.
with
And that's
different
part of it.
orders. It's
You have
part of
to
it until you
you have
kind
to
of
learn
find
it.
like they were like it was funny because they were like, how are you? One artist made a comment to me. He's like, I don't understand how you're doing several shows a year because this one show, just Gen Con, right? He's at Dragon Con too, but just
No,
Gen Con is stressing him out so much, and I'm just like, trust me, man. I've been where you're at. You
yeah,
will learn, and I was like, that's why I gave you guys, like, I literally gave you a laundry list of all my vendors because if vendor A fails, you go to vendor B. If vendor B is busy, you go to vendor C. If your last vendor on that list can't help you, then you have other problems. Like, it's not just it's the vendor issue. Like, playmats are a hard thing to get, and they are running out everywhere. So if your
I
vendor's
was
like, we're out of playmats, it's not. It's
yeah.
because that I feel like that market's getting a little saturated, but that's a whole
I was
different topic.
I was gonna say, like,
Yeah.
is this a mix of, make sure I remember my train of thought on this. Is this a mix of them not planning appropriately? Because I'm assuming, like, because you
Yeah.
do a decent amount of shows throughout the year, you more or less, and maybe Jason, you're the same way, where you have like your period where it's like, this is restocking period, and then that's it for the year. Maybe you'll top off here and there over the year, but it's not like with someone that's doing like Gen Con, like maybe like one or two shows a year, they'll do like their push of things right before that show. And it's like, no, maybe you should have like
Right.
sorted that months ago so you're not up against the deadline.
Right.
Well, some of it's a little bit of your vendor might
And
not be ready.
it's some of it is it just like the other part of my thought, sorry, it just caught to me. Is it also just them overthinking the situation and maybe
Yeah.
like kind of panicking over planning, but not over planning in a productive
So
way?
what's going to happen is what normally happens with new artists is it's like I think it's like a 3-part thing. Sometimes you're gonna under order for your first show. You're just not gonna have enough. You just won't because you don't have the money. You don't have the bandwidth to spend that kind of cash, right? And
Well,
then
and you
what's
also
gonna
don't
happen?
know what's going to sell, which means you're
Correct.
just
Which is
always going to get your inventory wrong until you learn it.
exactly. And I was trying to drive that point forward, and some of these artists have over ordered now. So they order more than they need. And I said, you don't know if that product's going to move. So you might be sitting on, and these are all lessons I learned the hard way, right? Like
Hmm.
so like when I was doing playmat inventory, for some reason, I have like 63 Bogdio playmats, which is the Tiger God. Okay.
Mhm.
And I have no clue why. I don't remember ordering that many. I think in my days of re-upping for shows, in my days, I might have just ordered extras and I didn't think about it, right? So I have to move those. But I know enough now where I never order him again, right? But when I was starting out early, I've under ordered and then I figured out what people like, and then I've over ordered until you find that. Like tell people like figure out for your they ask how many prints should I order? I'm like, well, you need to figure out which prints are selling. You can't just be like,
Yeah.
so if you want to be easy on yourself, you can order 10 of each and then see
I was
what
gonna,
moves.
I was gonna say, do you prescribe? Yeah, I think Bruce does that, where it's like either 5 or 10 of the new, like if it's like a
So
new piece,
it's
like
the
5 or
same
10 of
trick.
it,
Yeah,
and
it's the
sells
same
out.
thing.
And he's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
I
I'll
mean, I
order
told
more.
them this trick, which is you order once you know which print is more popular and you know that's going to move at a show, you can either order 20 to 30 of your most popular ones. So let's say your top 3 prints, 20 to 30 of those.
Right.
Then you can order 20 to 10 of the next tier. And the ones that don't barely move, you just want 10 to 5. Because otherwise you're carrying a bunch of extra stock, you know? And if you
Yeah.
have like a storage unit, like most of us do, I think, you can just store it there. It's a product that's not going to go bad. You can still take it to another show. You just have to make sure you do good inventory. Like, I
Yeah.
sell a lot of metal and playmats, so my inventory now is like pristine because both those products are expensive. So you don't want to overorder. You can if you got the money, but you dumb if you are because
Yeah.
you can use that money other places.
Yeah. Playmats are a big investment in quantity, especially. Like you need to be a little bit more conservative with those, especially with new images. That's why I like to treat playmats as a secondary product category, actually. Even though they're my main seller compared to prints these days, I still use prints to try out new images and
Yep.
order more conservatively in playmats until I know for sure that it's going to work out. Because they take longer, to move around, to sell through, and you don't want
Right.
to order more of them if you don't have to.
Yeah.
So what I've been doing at shows is similar to what you're doing with the prints. And then if somebody's like, "Hey, does this come in a playmat?" I'll say it does. And if you want to place an order with me today, I'll ship it to you as soon as I have them in stock. And then I
Yeah.
just take the order. And then, by the end, like I
Oh,
create a Google form, which is basically what Justin's been filling out when people are buying stuff now because he's selling out of mats. So I'm like, take an order.
Gotcha.
I mean, the cost of shipping those things is like $5 or $6. So you eat that cost. Now, there's some artists in our group who are like, I try to get people to pay for half that cost, and I'm just like, nah, man, just get the sale done.
Yeah.
Eat the $6.
Uh,
Your markup's high enough.
exactly.
I know more or less the kind of product that you carry, Alan. Which actually I have a follow-up question for the anime thing, but I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Jason, are you mainly just prints and playmats, or do you have other stuff?
So my main product these days is actually token cards, because I sell them to Magic players. I mean, playmats are definitely, my second place product, and I do make a great deal of money off those. But token cards tend to be the majority, and I sell those things like crazy.
And the token cards, if I remember right, are those the ones with the white backs, like the artist proof, or is that something else entirely?
That's something else. And those actually are kind of a growing market as well now, which are when you do art for a Magic card, they send you, complimentary copies of it with a white back, and then it's like a rare collectible version of the card or whatever. And that's something people didn't know existed for a long time, so it was kind of a hard sale actually.
Oh wow.
Because you're like, oh, there's only 50 of these, or there's only 30 of these, so this is, there's a reason I'm
It
charging
looks
White
like
$200.
you
versus
printed it off
damage.
yourself, and you're like trying to sell
Right,
it.
exactly. And
Yeah.
they're like, but it's not even a real card. How is this worth anything? And it's like, it's the rarest thing in the world, I promise. But the player base is actually kind of wised up to what they are and how cool they are.
Yeah.
And now they understand the value there. So I'm selling a lot more of those. But token cards are something else. Token cards are basically, they're a representative, like stand-in for the game table. When you have a card or a character that summons, more monsters, or soldiers or whatever, like you've got a druid and he summons wolves. Like you need to have a representative on the table of what those wolves are. And the token cards are basically how you can add something to the game, so you have a visual reference, and it's
So
got the stats on it.
it could be like a wolf, a zombie, a soldier.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's literally
there's
hundreds of
hundreds of them.
different
I looked that
kinds of
up one
monsters
day.
that
I
you
thought it
can
was like,
summon now. It's crazy how much variety there is, which is part of the science behind it, actually, too. You have to know which token cards to make and which ones to print and bring with, because there is such a broad variety in the game that is technically playable all at once now. But the way the game works is, it has standard format and modern, and there's tons of different ways to play Magic, but um, the core of the game that is being mostly played by the most people at any one given time is constantly sort of shuffling forward with the new sets, and they get rid of the old sets at the same time. There's like a window of playable cards there, so you focus in on what's popular and what's being played and what is actually useful in the game right now, and you can figure out which tokens are going to be the priority ones to print up and to bring with.
Hmm.
But it
do
is
you
tricky to get that right too. It's almost like guessing which prints are going to sell at a given show. You're always going to get it wrong and bring more of something that
right?
nobody wants. But at least with tokens, they're small and light, so it gives you kind of a
Oh
nice
man,
buffer on
whenever
that.
I have any metal or playmats left, I'm like, damn it.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
oh my god, you
Do
don't
you
want to
sell
bring
your
that home.
tokens in like packs at all? I don't remember. I know you
So
sell them
I did.
individually.
I've experimented a lot with that actually. With packs, I did early on. I even did like randomized variety packs. I did 50 packs. I did 5 tokens in a pack. I did themed packs where it's like specific creature type and it's just a
Sure.
bulk, of them. And what I realized was the way people play the game, the people that use tokens a lot almost always have multiple deck types. So there are the occasional customer that's buying 1 or 2 tokens at a time because that's all he needs. But that's not a customer that I'm really trying to accommodate. I'm trying to figure out how to sell the most tokens at once that I can. So I'm selling them mostly to players who have lots of different deck types that they need to buy tokens for, which means I can't accommodate that with a set bulk like package. Like I can't have a box that it's got 2 elves and 2 dragons and 2 zombies and 2 wolves or whatever, because it's going to inevitably be a situation where there's going to be people buying it that they're like, I don't need half of these, so
Right.
why would I want that? So I just do a bulk rate that's almost the same deal, only it allows people to
Pick and
sort of
choose.
customize. They
That's
pick and
cool.
choose which ones they want.
Yeah. That's a smart
So
way
it
to
works
do
out
it.
better for them, and it works out better for me because I don't got to deal with all the fucking packaging and boxes and
Yeah, you just
sorting.
package it up as a buy it, I guess.
As a big display.
Does that have to be printed on like basically like the same stock as like what the cards are, or is it just whatever, or like in terms of like the paper stock
Stock?
of the token? Yeah.
They're gonna have to put
Oh,
it
for
in
the
a sleeve.
tokens?
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter what you print it on, in all honesty, because most of the time, they put it in the sleeve. I mean, I've known a lot of artists that sell tokens that are, clearly just printed out of like cardstock that's got like a gloss on it. I don't do it that way because I charge a little more for my tokens. It's one of the products that I'm kind of known for by the player base. So I actually have a playing card printer that does professional grade casino cards with like
Nice.
the blue core and the nice little texture to it, so it's easier to shuffle. And I mean they do some of the nicest playing card printing in out of anybody that I've gotten samples from. So I have them do all of my printing. It's more expensive, but it allows me to charge a little bit more
Quality
and
of
have
it,
kind of a quality product.
Sure.
So
That's
I mean,
interesting.
that'll stand out for you, so that's good.
Yeah, I honestly assumed it would have to like at least match the same quality as the Magic cards, or
yeah,
like
it pretty much
it's weird
does.
to me to think like some artists are just like, yeah, whatever, like home printer on a cardstock thing, it's fine. It's
I
like,
mean, it's
no,
not like when we
that would
were
drive me
like,
insane.
when I was in high school, where I'd be like, I need this card, I need to play it. So you would like print out a color copy of it, and then you would take like a
Yeah,
land
with
card,
Pokemon
and then
cards in
and,
middle
and then
school.
glue it on there, and then put in a sleeve, and then nobody recognized it unless they really looked at it. And you'd be like, you don't own that card. I'm like, but I'm playing it, like let's go.
Yeah.
I
Well,
tried to run
the
counterfeit Pokemon cards in middle school using that exact method.
That fits, that tracks for you. You're that guy.
well the token business has kind of come along too in the last few years because when I first started doing Magic tournament shows, that the kind of crappier tokens were not uncommon, and the artists that were doing them, which was very few artists actually, were charging like 50 cents or less per token. So it was
Oh
kind of
wow.
a very low end product. And now you go to one of these shows and you see people selling tokens for like $5-10 a piece, and they're nice. And some of them are even printed on like aluminum. Some of them are on like wood with like a burned in image. I mean, like they do all kinds of stuff, acrylic, to make them unique and interesting and give them, kind of an extra layer of cool factor that
I mean, I
allows
feel like
them
if
to
someone
charge a
put
little more.
wood in there, you'd be like, I can't put this in my deck, man.
You really can't, but you don't do that with tokens anyway. You got to fit it in your deck box, but
Sure.
it doesn't get shuffled or
Oh,
anything.
that's a good point. It just comes
It's like
out
a
when you're
side item
playing.
that you pull
Yeah,
out
yeah,
when you use it. So,
that makes sense. I did
but
one
that's why.
time. Quick side story: I did play with a guy who had very rare cards in like the hard sleeves, like hard, like not sleeves, but like the cases.
Almost like comic book rating.
So yeah, so when he stacked his deck, it would like stood up like that high on the table,
Oh my
and
god.
he shuffled it like he messed it up on the table and then stacked. It was like I was like, what's
It seems
happening
like
right
you're
now?
just like shuffling like
What's happening right now?
Well, he was like, this is one of my. He's like, he was so confident that we weren't gonna beat him. And I remember it was three again. It was 3 of us playing. So like, my friend was playing with me. He was like, we gotta take him out first. He's got the best cards. He's the strongest player in the game. So we took him out first. He was so mad before my friend and I could finish playing against each other. He kicked us out of his house. And he's like, "You guys
Oh,
gotta go."
really?
Yeah, he was super
Oh my
pissed.
goodness.
I mean, he works for a game shop now. He knows like he's got like the rare magic cards. But I remember that I was like, "Why are you even playing with these?" Like,
Yeah, but that's how they have to play with them. They have to have them like triple sleeved and shuffle them very carefully. And it's
I
like,
just wouldn't play with those, right? I'd just be like, "No, these aren't never
no,
leaving my house."
when you've got like $20,000 worth of cards sitting on the table next to you, you use them for bragging rights. You do not like gamble with that kind of money.
Right.
That's
No,
just
yeah.
dumb. I mean,
So
if you really want to, you can make proxies of them, and
yes,
put those in deck backs and just be like, I have the real card. I'm just not going to play with it or whatever. Like you
right.
can do that. And that's what a lot of people, usually the same people do. But, I guess if you really want to feel like a baller, you can be a dumbass.
He felt like a baller till he
Oh, we lost.
Did not win.
till he got trounced. Yeah, I forgot what my friend my friend put a specific card on. I can't remember what it's called now because it's been so long. But it basically whatever damage his creature took, like he would take 2, and then I kill that creature, so they both died, and then he got pissed. Like literally 10 seconds, he was like, "Get out of my house." And I was just like, "Damn, I just met you. You're so rude. I'm never coming back here again." But I did have a question. Like, I want to talk about, speaking of how you said you figured out how to price your tokens and stuff. I think that's another important thing for artists. Like you and I messaged you earlier this afternoon, Jason, because I was trying to figure out the cost for my desk mats, right? Because playmats, I realized, will sell. I have my playmats at 40 or 2 for 60, and at $40, they sell fine all day, no problems. Some artists have tried to convince me to up that cost to 50, and I was like, it'll probably still sell at 50, but I feel like that sale is going to be that much harder, and it's not really worth it to me. $10 sounds nice, but also like at 40, no one balks at it. It's the same thing with prints, right? My prints, a lot of us used to sell our prints at $30 or 2 for 50. And I remember when we slowly increased it to 40, 2 for 60. A bunch of us did it. And so a bunch of the artists did it at the same time, so people wouldn't be like, that guy's cheaper. Right. Sure, buy from him. It's like when they, I'm like, that these are my costs. So that's what I told the artists who are upping their playmats at 50. I'm like, just do it and let me know how it goes. Like, it's the same thing it's the same dance we did with the prints, right? You have to test the market and see if people are willing.
See what happens.
People might be like, your art is so awesome, I will spend the $50, right? Or like with the prints, I've had people come up to me and be like, "Oh, that guy's selling prints for $20," and I'd be like, "Is it original art or fan art?" And it's usually my first question, because if it's fan art, he's gonna sell that cheap, sell it cheap, and it's like you decide what you want to buy, and but I always tell artists the same thing, which is put it at the highest cost you want, and then bring it down from there. Like if it's not selling, it's too high, because it's harder to go the other way. If you have it at a low cost and it's selling, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm gonna raise my costs. Some people are gonna be like, oh, this guy's raising all his costs, he must be doing really well. Other people can be like, well, that's not cool.
Yeah.
It can go either way.
Do definitely, you will lose sales when you raise costs. I mean, that's just inevitable. But it's also a part of the process. I mean, you start out, you're not well known, you need to move quantity, you need to experiment with what sells and what doesn't, and you really have to do that the hard way. And the only way to really do that is to start low and sort of grow your prices as you become more successful. So I mean, it's inevitable, and it's worth doing though still.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of stuff I was telling these. I say there's no way to be like, this is the exact cost. Like this product sells at this cost exactly.
Yeah, there's no science to it, or no exact science, at least.
Well, even if like
error.
12 of your artist friends, that's not a good number. Let's go 20. 20 of your artist friends are selling playmats at $40, and out of that 20, 4 of them decide to go to $50. So you got to let them test the market for you, like and then
you also got to factor like things like name cash and all that. Like, say for instance, if you or Jason wanted to raise your playmat prices up to like 50, you probably would do well with that. If I tried to do it, they would probably look at me and be like, I don't fucking know you. What are you doing selling $50 playmats?
I mean, that's the secondary. That's the main. I shouldn't say secondary. That's the main thing you got to do first, right? So you got to build your brand. Like
Yeah.
like my costs were way lower when I started, like, so but I learned that lesson, like I was trying to raise costs on things like prints and playmats as I realized, but I also like didn't just raise on the regular ones. Like with the playmats, I moved from non-stitch edging to stitch edging. So I was able to be like,
Right.
hey man, here's an extra cost here. That's why I went up. And with the prints, I went from like just kind of darker, it was on somewhat okay paper to like a little bit more high quality paper. And most of you guys have seen my work at the shows. The prints pop, so like I pay for that. It's an extra cost. And if I wanted to move up to archival like photo paper, maybe I can raise my costs a little. But at the same time, I tell people, it's like you don't really have to raise your cost that much because we're all still doing okay with the costs we're at. It just comes down to how much money do you really want to make at the end, right? Like,
Yeah.
you want to build a fan base or you want to make money, right? Like San Diego, for example, I told people, I'm like, this show's perfect for building your brand and building a network and then making some money. Like Gen Con's good for both, all three, but what are you there for? Like you have to sort that out, and that'll help you determine your costs too. Like, yes, I
Yeah.
want to make sales. I'm not going to be like I don't want to make money because that would be dumb. Because like I have a business to run, but I try not to put that first.
Sure.
Because it's that much more stressful. I think.
I did want to ask you how San Diego went, but I also wanted to circle back to the thing we were talking about earlier, real quick,
Yeah.
which was the getting a booth instead of being in the art show is very
Yeah.
valuable. There's another reason it's valuable that I'd forgotten to mention, and San Diego is where I specifically learned this lesson first, actually, because it's been the most popular comic show in America, for so long. Depending on how New York is counting their numbers any given year, anyway. San Diego is still technically the number one, and it's been very difficult to get into with a booth as a new exhibitor
Yeah.
for a long time now. As a result of that popularity, they've had a waiting list, right?
Right.
So when you're in the art show or in the artist alley, even actually in San Diego, even the artist alley has a waiting list. But the point is when you're growing your business over the long term, um, and there's a 10-year waiting list to be able to do that, you need to plan ahead for that, right? Like you need to get your name on that waiting list and just sort of hope that eventually a spot comes up, or maybe you can get one before that happens if you make a deal with somebody or you see an opportunity. But you have to basically plan ahead in that vast of a fashion in order to have a chance of growing your business in that kind of venue. But it's really important also when it comes to a thing like Gen Con, where it's a show that's been growing so consistently for so long now. Um, and you have the opportunity to get a booth now, and your business is big enough for you to have a booth now, but you're still choosing to be in the art show and put your business at that show every year at risk because it's financially safer. Um, but very soon you're going to have a waiting list situation with a show like Gen Con and a show
Yep.
like Dragon Con. I mean, when shows get to this sort of 80,000 attendees number range, it's only so long before they start to grow past that, and they become very, very difficult to become a part of in that same way. So you have to take the opportunities when they're available at a show like this.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's the build your brand while it's available. Because I talked about this several times where I feel like in the next couple years I'm just gonna have to move into a model of selling online and hopefully being at a show, right? Because if I'm
mhm.
lucky, like now with Gen Con, I'm with you guys in your booth, and at Dragon Con, I have a booth. So if I'm lucky, those booths will still be available to me for the next couple years. But shows like San Diego, it's a decision that I basically rent a spot from the Lemons. So it's up to if they decide one year they don't want to do it, then
You'll
I
be
need to decide, do
SOL.
I want to buy this whole booth, right? Like and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and or like shows like OhioCon is a show I do in January. That's jury. If I don't get in, then it's like. But I'm also like not banking on that January show. If I get in, awesome. I'd love to do it because it's local. It's not local, but it's only 6 hours away. I stay with a friend of ours, Andrew Thompson, lives in Ohio, so we all stay at his house. It's a nice weekend show. You make a couple grand at it. You have a good time. And it's just extra money. But if I didn't get in that show, I mean, I would just stay home and keep working, right? So at some point, if you build your brand up, in theory, you should be able to move all your tokens online versus having to go to the shows, because you don't want to do this. You don't want to do this your whole life. I know I don't want to do this my whole life. I don't want to be that, like,
Yeah.
Hey, you don't want to
we've
be
seen,
the con.
you know
the
who I'm
con
talking about,
dude.
Jason. We've seen that old dude working the show still, and you're just like, that guy looks miserable.
There was an artist I talked to at MegaCon this past year, actually, and he was one of those guys that's he's a what I call a show artist, where he just goes from convention to convention, and he's at every convention that has even close to enough people going to it to justify showing up and trying to sell stuff. And
Right.
he's like doing 40, 50 shows a year at least,
It's too many.
and every year, right? And he's
Oh,
just
like
like,
a older comic book artist, or just
he was
whatever.
just. I'm not sure where his art has been. I think it's mainly just print sales at shows. You know,
Oh, okay.
he's that's where most of these guys tend to specialize, because they discover doing work to sell as prints. If you sort of lock in on a specific look and a style and can kind of build a fan base and just go to shows and make money that way, a lot of these guys just make their art about that, right? Because the art that you're making to sell as prints to randos at comic shows is not the same art that you're making to go into big brands. It's generally not the same, because when
Right.
you're
Very
making it
different.
for
Yeah.
show audiences, it has to be full of all those archetypes we talked about. And it has to be, just appealing on a basic level, and it has to have certain, iconic elements to it that are very simple and easy to understand and people are familiar with. Whereas if you're doing commission art, it's got to be a specific thing or a specific character doing a specific thing, and it's almost never going to look uh, like it's full of those archetypes, right? It's just
Right.
not going to do it the same way. Years ago, I knew a guy that was doing show art, and he was just specializing in like half naked girls with big boobs and fairies and vampire girls, and like all that stuff sells well as prints. It's not the kind of thing you can do as a commission artist. It's not the
Right.
same business.
Quick side note, it is storming here, so if I do drop out, I'll be back, because sometimes the power glitches.
All right.
Oh,
And
gotcha. All right.
it may happen, it may not. I'm hoping they fix that problem.
But the reason I was bringing up that guy specifically, though, was, I was talking to him about doing shows, and I told him how many shows I did, and he was like, that's nothing. And I was like, oh man, yeah, I don't know how you do it. And he's like, I don't want to anymore. I like my
Exactly.
soul is dead. Like he just
It's
hated
a
the
lot.
idea of living that life. And he's like, all my friends think my life is so cool. Like I get to travel all the time and go to all these places.
It's like to the same kind of like space everywhere.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. It feels like, like Groundhog Day, where it's like, oh, it's a convention center.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I see, like somebody made a comment to me last week over, like, it would be awesome if I was just this level of artist that shows up, signs a bunch of things, and leaves, right? Like Brian Otley
Yeah.
was across from us.
Yeah.
He did Invincible, and he was just like, he was not non-existent the whole time, and then he would just walk in. There'd be a line of people already waiting for him, and he would just sign a bunch of comics. It probably took like an
Did the
hour.
thing
Bounced,
and then got the heck out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
That's the
talked to him
dream, baby.
briefly
That's it.
last year, because Tatiana Dykes, who's been on the show, she got me a print signed by him. I didn't even have to wait in that line. She was just like, "I know, Brian.
Yeah.
I'll get or
Oh,
Ryan,
yeah.
I'll get you an autograph." I was like, "Sweet," like. But I did walk over to talk to him, because I was like, "Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate this." Like, because I had messaged him. He's one of those rare artists that anyone who knows me knows. I just reach out to people if I have, whether I know you as an artist or not. I'll reach out if I have a question for you, and I think that's how Jason, you and I became friends. But Ryan and I aren't on this level, okay? But I was able to. I remember reaching out to him years ago, saying, "How'd you get so good at drawing characters?" Or he draws everything, right? And he literally said, "I just drew everything." He's like, "You see a book, draw a book. You see a chair, draw the chair."
Yeah.
And and that's how
Comic book mentality, man.
Yeah, but it's just I
how you
don't
do it.
want to. I've had this talk over and over, and I talked to my wife about this. Like, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be there. Like, even just setting up for these shows now is exhausting for me. And like,
Yeah.
like next week's show, my setup is bigger, the biggest setup I've had to date. And I know I'll get through it. I'll get it done. I'll set it up. I'll pace myself through it, and we'll have a great show. But I'm so like people don't see that part of it, right? They don't see how we show up and have to like make this elaborate looking setup, right? And then how at the end, with no air conditioning, mind you, because Gen Con won't pay for it. And then at the end of the show, people don't see how I have to take my pants off and put on my shorts, like because it's 108 degrees in the convention hall. I remember somebody once saw me do that. They're like, "Bro, are you changing?" I'm like, "Mind your business." Like, because
Don't
you
worry
can't
about
work, you can't work with your shorts on during the show because it's like -30 in there, and then it's
Yeah.
like you're fighting like this all that to get your elaborate. Everyone's like, your setup's so good. I'm like, yeah, man, you guys don't realize the amount of stress that
it causes.
look
Yeah.
to like hit this like standard people want from you now, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't like half-ass it anymore. Like I can't half-ass it anymore. So like I couldn't do like a smaller booth at some point and just be like, here I am, I'm here. But if I could figure out a way, and I'm still like formulating plans in my head to generate these online sales, I would like to, I wouldn't mind being the guy that shows up for like 4 shows a year, which I think is
You
what
do like
Jason
a
does.
pop-up or something, and
Yeah.
then
Well,
yeah.
that was the punchline of the story is that the show guys that I've known over the years, they're all kind of like that, where they do so many shows in a year, and this is their only income. They do online sales to supplement it, of course, but
Sure.
their main income is just traveling from city to city to city as many weekends of the year as they can, like a roadie, you know. And they yeah, after 20 years of that, you
I mean,
can't
especially
take
if
it
you have like a
anymore.
family, right? Like I don't like being away from
Right.
my kids that long,
And
Like
it's hard to get a family when you're living that lifestyle too,
I was
actually.
gonna say it seems like a very similar lifestyle to like a trucker,
yeah.
where
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah, there's a number of
you're
jobs that are
home
like
for
that.
like you're home for
I
like
mean,
maybe
it's got all the
3 months out
elements,
of the
right?
year.
Minus the
Yeah.
cocaine.
Yeah. Right. Well,
Well,
for
maybe
I
depends.
don't
most of them.
know.
Yeah, artists are a weird bunch,
I mean,
but
I
no,
did.
what I
I did.
realized
I never mind. I'm
what I
not gonna talk
realized
about my
years ago was
drugs.
I didn't want to be one of those guys.
Yeah.
That's the thing I'm getting to is that
So how do we
I
like? So the question is, how do we move? Like what? I've been trying to come up with plans for how do we like not completely leave the shows, but how do we move to a way where like online presence and or making sales somehow through distributors is our main, and the shows are our bonus, right? Like so when we show up to a show, we're just like, hey man, I'm just here to do my thing. If I do good, I do awesome. If I don't, then no big deal. I had a good
no,
trip.
if your if your main sales angle for your work is to become uh or just sell your work as an artist, right? That's your whole angle. That's your entire brand. It's difficult to get big enough and culturally relevant enough to sell enough online where that's your income. It's
Right.
almost impossible, actually. One of the things that some of the artists realized a few years ago was that if you build a brand like yours or like mine, where you're building something that is itself uh, an entertainment brand that's
Yeah.
sort of you, but also separate from you. It's something people can look at and understand, and it's bite size, and it gives them something to be a fan of, other than just the abstract idea of you as an artist and a random collection of work. It's thematic and it's identifiable, and it has archetypes that they can look at and say, "I'm a fan of this." And you will sell more online more consistently with something like that people can wrap their brain around. Um, and that's really the best way to sort of manage that, I think, that I've seen so far.
Yeah. I just need to sort
Makes
out
it
if
makes
I
the most
pay for
sense,
it.
to be honest.
Well, I'm trying to sort out like, do you pay for advertising, right? Like I see
Oh,
Instagram
definitely, yeah,
ads all day long. Like, do I pay for that,
yeah.
right? Um,
It's growing a fan base however you can. I mean,
yeah.
advertising is part of it. It's a big part.
I,
I
Going to
know I
shows
know
and
some artists
advertising.
have paid an advertising company. It was like
Oh yeah,
I was
it was
gonna
like 3 grand a
say
month, 1,500 a month, or 3 grand a month. But like I'm like, if they get your product off the board, 3 grand is nothing, right? Like if you
exactly.
pay them 3 grand for the
It pays
month and
for
you make
itself,
10,
Mhm.
right?
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's a big risk, so
it
you have
is
to
a
be in a
risk.
position to take
Yeah.
that risk before you can do it. But yeah,
I would say like at least like my 2 cents is, and this is not me actually having to implement this. This is just from my wife's past experiences because she used to work at like advertising for a news station and everything. And yeah, like social media advertising, that was not a fact. Like that they just were like, whatever, that's like worthless to us because it doesn't gain you any kind of traction. The real thing is, and like even like their like they never advertised like the news station itself. It was always like other clients like lawyers, whatever, advertising on the news, on like the news site and all that. That is where the advertising was, and like the clients, some of the clients, like smaller businesses, whatever, kind of like you guys and all that, they would try and do like some of the social media stuff as well. but some of the larger ones like Jason, I'm sure you see some billboards in your area for all I know, like Dan Newland, the lawyer at all. Do you see? Is he
Um,
up there in Jacksonville at
he's
all?
he's not one of the ones that we see here, but we have our own. Yes.
Gotcha.
Who is this
It's
guy?
like he's a local ambulance chaser lawyer. But like this dude, he basically cuts a check for like 1 to 2 million a year for budgeting for like marketing. He's like, I don't care how it's spent. This amount needs to be spent by the year's end. And as far as I
On
understand from
anything?
him, like just advertising. That's the thing.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Here's 1 to 2 million for advertising. I don't care how it's done. Get
Sure.
it done
It could
and
be like a
make it
billboard or
effective.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, make it effective. So like, yeah, there's billboards and stuff, but none of it is ever like social media advertising. Like I don't think any of them ever
No,
approach
I'm
like
hearing social media is not the place at, but I'm like, where do you like? I've
it
I've
would be like
considered
it would
getting
be
a
like
billboard.
well, I was gonna say it's like emailing a website that
Yes.
has specific interests that align with your brand and being like, hey, what does it cost to run an ad on your site or whatever?
Right. I mean, my mailing list is my number one point of sale. Like, like I message all the people. I've got almost 2,000 people on the list now. I wish I had like some people have like 10,000. Like, I feel like if once I get to like 5,000, I'll be in this comfort zone I want to be in that I'm talking about. Because out of 2,000 people, I notice like there's always about 600 or so that haven't opened their emails. Like, they just don't. And then you send it
Right.
out again, and there's usually about 50 more that open it. So that's telling me like
Do
roughly
you ever
five
do
to
like
600 people aren't opening that email.
do you
Probably
ever do
going to
like
spam.
targeted where it's like, you have your general where it's set
So
to
you could
everyone, but
pay
then
for
you have
that.
maybe
You could.
oh
That's what I've tried that with Facebook, where you could target like you could target specific regions. So I've done
nah,
like
I'm talking like just your like MailChimp newsletter, like where you say like
so
here's
I
your
haven't
general
paid them for
newsletter.
that.
No, you
Oh,
can do it for free in MailChimp. Like where you say like here's my general newsletter. I'm gonna
sure.
send out this additional newsletter. It's only gonna target this subsection that opened like the last three newsletters or one of the last three
No,
newsletters.
can you pull those emails separately?
Yes. Yes, you can.
I'm gonna have to look into that because what I have done is use Mailchimp to email just my. Well, no, I do it directly through my business account. I message just my collectors, and I did this before. I was telling Jason I did this for San Diego, and I basically say, "Hey, I've got those big metals. I did it last year. It worked. I didn't think it worked this year, but I messaged him and said, "Hey, if you want grab first dibs on these big metals that are coming. A lot of my collectors want number one. I only make 10." And I moved a couple of them, but it was like I was literally boarding my plane. I was like, "Holy crap! I just sold one." But like, I think with the collectors, those are what you also call your true fans, right? Like, they want the
They
ones that are
want
on my
stuff.
list had bought stuff for me from when I was selling prints only. You know what I mean? And they were,
Mhm.
one guy on that list, he buys something from me every year. Like, he's almost guaranteed to buy one of those big metals from me. So he must have, I think he's got 4 of them at this point.
Oh
And
wow.
he bought my very first one when everyone's like, $1,000 is too much for these. And I was like, well, let's see what happens. And he was
He
like,
saw it. He was like, "That's my jam."
I still remember what he said to me. He goes, I don't have a credit card with my dad anymore. I have my own job now. And I said, cool, bro. And
I like
that's
that.
that he's making his own money and he wants to hang his own art. So I was like, cool. I didn't think he'd come back ever again. I was like, that's a one time thing, because that's a lot of money to spend on one piece, right? Like, but
Yeah.
he's become like a repeat collector, which is cool to have. But I'm not saying I bank on that, but it's like one of those things. Like, that specific email list will get a response, right? So I don't know if there's a way to like curate, like, hey, here are the 1,500 people that open that email. I would
Yeah.
test that, because the other 500
So
clearly
yes,
don't care to look at it, right?
there
They're not
is a
unsubscribing,
way.
they're not looking at it, which tells me it's probably going into like a spam folder.
Yeah, there is a way to do it in Mailchimp, and it's not an extra feature. There is
You have to
like I
show
think
me that later for sure.
yeah, there is like an extra. I think if you pay for whatever the paid thing is or whatever, you
Sure.
get like some additional stuff to do it. But the very like free option
Hmm.
is very robust for that.
I mean, I
You can
thought
even do it
about.
where it's like you can even do it where it's like if someone hasn't opened it in like say X amount of emails, send them an email saying like, "Hey, I'm gonna unsubscribe you if you,"
How dare
or
you
you
not
send
open my email? I'm gonna bounce you.
or you send an email that says, "Hey, you haven't engaged with me in
Yeah.
a while. Here's X
There's a
percent off
discount.
my
Yeah, yeah.
store. Yeah,
So
exactly.
I used to be able to do that with so I stopped paying, so I moved all my e-com stuff over to Shopify because apparently with Shopify I can have a little bit more control. Like I have an idea to do like packages for like, if you wanted like dice, playmats, a journal, you can make a package out of them. You can't really do that as easy with Square, but Shopify also has this abandoned, I think there's a way to turn on an abandoned cart where like if Jason looks at something and decides, maybe I'll get this later, or I changed my mind, it'll send me a message saying this person looked at, you know, has these items in their cart and decide to leave. So I should, in theory, be able to send Jason an email saying, "Hey, I noticed you haven't pulled the trigger. Would a 10% discount help you take the extra step forward?"
Yeah, like just a
Which,
little incentive
yeah,
kick.
but then you got to be good about like I have to be good about checking my Shopify once a week because sometimes that email doesn't come through to me saying, "Hey, somebody bought something." I had the last customer messaged me and said, "Hey, I placed an order a week ago." And I'm like, "You did? I didn't see it. Sorry." Um,
And
but
that might just be a back end like
yeah, I mean,
integration
I don't know
thing
if
that
Gmail
they
is
got.
just ignoring it, but then
But
with Klaviyo, I've been thinking about moving from Mailchimp to Klaviyo because I don't know if that's how you say it, but they have an option to also send. This might be annoying to people, but you can also send text messages to people who have
oh my goodness.
shared their phone number, which sounds a
Yeah.
little like extra intrusive, but at the same time, if you like say, "Hey, just so you guys know, Ancient Ones is having a major sale right now. You can get all the
Why not
what."
just call him? Like, hey, man.
Hey, by
That's
the way,
not.
I noticed you bought a print from me before. I got a bunch of stuff on sale here.
I'm not
But
calling to talk to you
I
about your
haven't done
car's
that yet
extended
because I'm not
warranty. I
sure.
promise.
I'm not sure I want to be that person.
yeah,
Sending a text feels the same though, is what I'm getting at. Because
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that's
yeah.
been a real thing lately with spam calls. Like the robocalls aren't happening nearly as much, but like the spam texts are just getting out of control. And
yeah.
being a part of the problem is not what you want to be.
Right. That's why I haven't done it because I was like, I don't like it when that happens to me. But I thought it was
Right.
interesting. Like, I'm like, what else can you guys like? What else can we do here? Like, without being so annoying that customers are like, I don't want to talk to this guy. Now, like San Diego, for example, most of the next 3 shows I'm doing, luckily for me, I built the brand up enough where I repeat customers, right? Like San Diego,
Yeah.
I would say 8 out of 10 customers were like, "Oh, it's great to see you again." And then I play
Yeah.
this game in my head of like, who's this person? When did I meet this person? What do they do? Like,
So what you got
but
to
sometimes I
learn
don't
is
remember them
like
when they're like, "Hey, remember me?" And I'm like, "No, man, I'm
no, I
sorry."
was gonna say,
Yeah,
well,
I meet like 3,000 people a day, bro.
Yeah.
you gotta
And
you
then
gotta
but there's
adopt
that very rare one that you do meet and remember because they spent time to talk to you, or maybe they
Oh
became
yeah,
your friend. So like there's
that is true too.
these two brothers that is my friend Barkley and his brother. I met him. I mentioned him in the last episode. I met him years ago at like an Indiana PopCon, and they love my fan art. And when I moved to Ancient Ones, they kept buying the stuff. And last year they were in San Diego, and they were talking to me about like, they know I like Kevin Eastman, so they tried 4 times to get me Kevin Eastman's signature. He didn't have to do that. He's there to watch the show,
oh
you
yeah, this
know,
group. Yeah.
or enjoy the show. But he
Oh,
helped me
cool.
out. But he came to talk to me, and he bought stuff from me, and I was just like, you know, and that's a true fan. And so you'll remember those people.
Yeah.
But I had a guy
Oh,
at my
definitely.
booth who was like, we talked last year. I don't know if you remember me. I bought your book, and I was like, I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't. And it's exactly what you said. I was like, I meet so many people. I'm like, it's not me trying to be a dick to you. It's just me. I
I've
can't.
seen people handle that two ways. Either it's like that way, or it's like what I call like the Paul McCartney way, where you figure the amount of people that Paul McCartney meets on a daily basis,
Yeah,
he doesn't remember like a fifth of those, even
sure.
like 100 of those, right? But every single person he meets, if they're like, oh, like we met before, he's like, oh yeah, like he has a canned like. It's almost kind of like if you watch closely, it's like you can kind of see the flow chart in his head
Yeah,
of like how am I navigating this conversation, but he also has it like this is very specific for him being a high celebrity, that being the big enough celebrity he is. He has a very specific flow chart where he gets into the conversation and then immediately it's like getting out as soon as
yeah.
possible, while
You got to get
also
out before they figure it out.
well, getting out of the conversation as soon as possible, but also leaving that person feeling like they weren't just like shunted to the side, right?
Yeah,
And like Tom
I'm.
Cruise does the exact same thing. If you ever watch him like talk, he has a very specific like flowchart manner within his like speech, that he talks like random strangers, where it hones in on one thing and then when he finds his out, he pulls the ripcord, and then he's like, "All right, I'm on to the next person now," and he starts
I
talking
have
to
to
that
watch
person.
some videos of that, but yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, like
It
it's like
yeah, it's interesting, but yeah,
I mean, I was telling Miles. So Miles and I went to this tabletop gaming
yeah,
party. We got an invite to it, and then
yeah,
this other guy that's sitting with us, Jake, is like, "How do you remember all these people's names?" I'm like, "I don't. Like, I know who they are because I've seen them at
Mhm.
enough shows now. I know what companies they
yeah.
work for. Because this is one guy he worked for. I think he's pronounced as Celio Fair Games. They make Gloomhaven, and I saw him earlier. He's like, "Hey, good to see you again." I'm like, "You too, man." And then I was like, "I don't remember him."
Yeah.
I was like, my brain was like, "Who is that guy? Why did I respond that way?" And I saw him at the show, and we went to this party, and he's sitting there, and he's just like, "Hey, what's up?" And I'm like, "Hey," and I looked at Miles. I was like, "I still have no clue who he is." And I said, when he walks over here, so I do this thing where like if Jason was there, I would just use Jason as an example. I'd be like, I would never say my name to it. I would be like, "Here's my friend here. This is his first time at the show." And then Miles said, "Hey, my name's Miles. Nice to meet you." And then he said
Oh,
his
you
name. I said,
clever.
I know who
Yeah,
he is. But
that's clever.
it doesn't work all the time, especially if someone like Miles knows the trick. So Miles would just say, "Hey, how's it going, man?" It's like, dude, say your name. You know, like
Yeah.
but I saw his hoodie, and then I put the two and two together real quick because I had hung out with him at Origins, I believe it was a couple years
Mhm.
back. With my friend Price works for this company. Then I was like, oh, that guy works with Price. But like it happens, and most people aren't
Yeah.
pissed about it, right? Um, and then on
Well,
the other hand,
at
you
a
have the customer.
convention, it happens to all of us. So,
Yeah,
nobody can be really angry about it. It's like,
The people that I guess I would say I had the hardest time with are the people that are very opinionated, and you guys know how I handle that. Like, oh, I had a guy at
yeah.
San Diego tell me AI was going to steal all my work, and I was like,
Oh my
okay.
goodness.
And then he said, I sure hope you are smart enough to go get a degree in something because this is all going to go away for you in a couple
That's
years.
kind of thing. Like, I don't understand.
He
I
was
especially
dead
don't understand.
serious too.
I especially don't understand that at a convention because it's kind of like you paid to come into here, a thing
Right.
that like
uh,
that my kind of people made a thing,
Well, he
and
was like,
you
I said,
decide
what
to
do you
spend
do
that
for a
time like
living?
just shitting on it all. It's like why would you spend this money to do this?
He was like, I mean, so like Ron and Vanessa and them were all watching me just interact with this guy, right? And I'm just like, what do you do for a living? He goes, oh, I don't have to worry about anything. I'm retired. He's like, you guys though, you guys are young enough to go get degrees. You should go get a better job than this. And I was just like, I have 3 degrees and I still choose to do this. So like, maybe I'm good at this. And he was just
You know,
like, I forgot what
uh,
he said something to me like you guys are just young and don't use your brains, or you're not smart enough to get out of it. And
oh,
I finally leaned up
it's
to him and I said,
just like general boomer talk kind of
yeah.
thing.
And I just finally leaned in. I said, get away from my booth. And he just walked away. He didn't even argue with me. And the customer that's standing there was like, I was going to say that to him if you didn't. I literally was like, get away from my booth. Like, I don't
yeah.
understand why you
I
felt the need to talk to me that way, you know?
I do want to go back before it gets like too late because like I see kind of what the time's getting at, but
Yeah, no worries.
I think Jason, you had a really good point where you do need to have like a identifiable brand with archetypes, especially for like online stuff. And the only reason I know this is because I struggle a lot, like in terms of like gallery work and all that, to make a name as just the art thing, like the abstract artist thing. That is a very
Mhm.
hard thing, like very hard
Oh yeah.
road to hoe. Yeah.
I
Um,
mean,
and part of that is like Al and I have talked about this like with me and stuff. Like part of that is like like at least for me, I'm not really quite sure yet what I would want to focus on. And another part of it is like my day job, and in addition to like the advertising work I do for freelance and stuff as well. It's a lot of like repeat themes and all that. Like it's a like for example, like a lot of stuff I draw is like day in day out. It's like the same thing. Reg 45. It's all like Boot Barn or Bells or the shopping outlet that you know of since it's in Florida. But Allen wouldn't. It's basically like a Macy's.
sure,
Um,
sure.
but like yeah, like fishing paraphernalia, Western paraphernalia, Navy paraphernalia, stuff like that. And like that is like I can do those by rote now. Like that's the back of my hand. I could do
Sure.
a lot of that in my sleep.
Wow.
So like when I'm given the chance to do my own stuff, I tend to bounce around a lot because I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't want to be pegged down right now.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I feel like you
So
do
But yeah,
perfect.
I
I
as
feel
a
actually
like
result though, like very hard to blaze that trail when
have some advice for you on that, and that is uh, basically if it's gallery work especially, that gives you kind of an area to do the research in, but it's collect and even if you do it like just by building a favorites folder or something, just look around and find all the art that you really really gravitate towards in those venues that sells well in the gallery scene, and that you really connect with, and just build separate folders with themes to them to where you can collect as much of it as you can, and see which folder ends up being the biggest at the end of that, and do stuff like that.
hmm.
idea, yeah. So then, yeah, just like kind of general archetype stuff,
Yeah,
or
I
like
I
mean,
mean,
yeah,
find
like
the themes basically
yeah,
that you really really like, and then do those themes.
I think I've told Andrew this before. I feel like he really likes horror themes, and I feel like if he leaned
Sure.
a little bit into like Lovecraft is obviously very popular, and
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to do specifically Lovecraft or your own version of Lovecraft, which would be a little bit harder to do. I feel like either one of those angles would help your market yourself very well. Like every time you've done a Cthulhu thing or a horror piece, it's been amazing. But I think it's
yeah.
because you enjoy that, and people can tell. But then there's a couple pieces where I could tell you're just like, I don't know about this one, but you get through it, because you're like, it's due in a week. I got to get this to EDO, and you could tell like the love wasn't there, the effort was there, but you were just kind of like, this is not what I wanted to paint. But I did. I started it, so I finished it. And not saying I haven't had a piece like
And
that
then
either. I'm like, fuck, this is
I'll
ugly.
freely admit, like at least with like EDO, there's been a few, not necessarily the larger ones. Those tend to be a little more plain out, but like the smaller ones, that's usually like Marion coming at me and be like, "Hey, like we had a last minute cancellation. Do you got anything?" I'm like, yeah, I got some
So that's when like
studies.
Jason's idea
I
might
got
come in
some
handy
ready for
too,
you to
right? You
go
just
out.
have a bunch sitting there, and you're like, you're up. Let's go. You know,
Yeah.
Jason,
Right.
you said you had another question for me. Do you remember what it was?
I do not remember what it was.
No worries. Something about you asked about San Diego, and then there's something else. Something about anime
Oh yeah,
cons.
I was going to ask you how San Diego, how it went for you overall.
So I beat last year's numbers. Um, I ordered more. I did the thing I said not to do, which is I over ordered playmats.
Yeah.
I
By how
sold I
much? Like
sold
a
88
lot
last
or
year or 89 last year, so I was gonna order 100, but since Ron and Vanessa are really nice and they hold my leftovers for me, I ordered 150, and I had about 44 mats left at the end of the show, so it's not bad, you
You
know.
didn't over order at all then. That's
So
44 mats. You don't got to order next time.
yeah, I was just like, can I just leave this with you guys? And then what I did was I worked a deal with there's a friend of mine who owns a big hobby shop, and he was like, I will buy mats off you. So I had a distributor who's, I'm not gonna name them, but they've been dropping the ball, and they haven't been shipping. Like a bunch of comic shops in between Origins and San Diego have come talk to me and said, "Are you still working with this distributor? Because we want to order mats from you." And I don't know why they're not responding to them. So I said, "Hey man, email me directly and I'll sell it to you wholesale direct." Like, so instead of them getting a cut too, it's down the line. I take my cut, they take their, they pay for it and it goes. This guy basically was going to take the leftover mats, but he realized he doesn't have the space for them. So I can
Mhm.
either leave them there till next year or send Ron a label and have UPS pick them up at his house, and he's also going to meet me at Gen Con. So he was like, whatever you have left over at Gen Con, in theory, he might have a truck with him. So whatever I have left over at Gen Con, he might just take with him. Either way, I built I would say it had a pretty good show because I found a new distributor in theory. Um, Made a couple deals. We'll see how those go. I went around and talked to like IDW and Boom Studios like Miles did. And Miles has got the end now because all the art directors know him. So I was just like, hey man, show them my stuff too. Not saying I want to work for them, but if I can do a cover, that'd be cool just to add to the
Heck yeah.
list,
yeah.
And yeah, all in all, I think the show's good. I did realize that if you're in the Artist Alley section, you have a chance of making a little bit more money, but it's only a 4-foot table and it's super crowded over there. And as of recently, I've heard a couple artists who are in that section have gotten COVID. It's probably because it was really like a lot of people going back and forth, and you're shaking a lot of
Sorry,
hands.
it's only a 4-foot table?
4 feet, and you're
Not even like a 6-foot
No,
standard?
it's
it's
crazy.
4 feet. It's a 4 foot table. They don't want you going taller than 6 feet, and your neighbor is like right there, like you're
Yeah,
like elbow to elbow.
You
that's
can reach
fucking
your arms
crazy.
out and like
Tap both
Yeah,
their
bump
shoulders.
both
you
your
couldn't even do
yeah.
like the full
I don't know how you sell anything in a space
So,
that small. I really don't.
but everyone
It's
who was
crazy.
that'd be
on
insane.
that, and it was literally like it's weird because it's like 100 feet from where I am. Right, it's just around this corner. It's like 100 feet, and then 10 feet in, and you're in Artist Alley. And they definitely made more than I did, but not by a lot. I would say maybe by like 2 grand, roughly,
Mhm.
if not more. But I'm just like, that's not worth the headache. It's not worth the 2 grand for me.
I
Like
know.
I'm good
It's
right
crazy.
here. Where my space is. I wouldn't say it's like huge, but
It's a
I
decent
could break
size.
dance back there if I wanted to. You know,
Yeah.
it's not recommended because I might kick stuff, but I could if I wanted to.
And a
Like
longer
you,
show like San Diego too, like you want that space,
yeah.
honestly. Like
Yeah.
being cramped like that, it's just oh man.
I don't know how they do it.
Yeah.
I'm just like
Damn,
every
that's a
year I see
fucking
my
ice
friends over there.
box.
Yeah, it's tight. So, but show wise, it was still there was a concern with Hall H. A lot of actors not showing up. Would people leave? Would people show up? I felt like it was just as busy. I didn't feel like it was any busier. Like I
Yeah.
thought anyone who's not in Hall H now would filter into the floor with us. It
Mm.
didn't feel any different than every year. I did notice a lot of big name artists dropped out. I feel like a lot of artists are done. Like Dave Seeley wasn't there, who's been a staple there for
Really?
I don't
Oh
know
yeah.
20 plus years, and he just said it was time for him, right? For his
Yeah.
personal reasons, he is out. But it's like 2 years ago, 2019, I believe it was, like Donato left, right? And
Oh yeah.
he
It's a staple for a long time.
yeah, and then this year and last year, Mignola hasn't shown up. His spot went to is like Ryan Otley, Frank Cho, and I can't remember the third artist, but it's like a giant like island of like, and it's all around. Like Dave Peterson was on the back of this island with Mosgard, and then so there's like a bunch of well-known artists in this like island circle, and then all they're doing is sitting there selling stuff and signing. But it's
But
like,
they're more comic focused artists, and I think that's really the major shift that I've seen in San
yeah,
Diego. When I started going in the kind of like the mid aughts, it was still a big fantasy artist component to it, but none of us were doing well. We were just doing it because it was a great venue to get seen, right?
right,
I mean, and we were making enough money to make it worthwhile, but it was not a big profit show by any means. It's the most expensive show, so
right.
making less money and having higher costs meant that you're making enough money to kind of make it worth going, but honestly, not really. Considering the amount of work involved, you were doing it for the visibility and to hang out with all your buddies.
It's pretty much
But
what I told these artists. I was like, I'm here to build a brand and just do
right,
good
and
shit.
those things are still real value there. But the number of artists that seem like they can actually succeed at the show, beyond that, it seems like it's mainly just comic artists now that
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
really built for.
Miles does work for some work for Marvel, and his stuff was just flying off the table. Like, so I to the point where we were like, your originals are priced too low, because
Huh?
people are buying them. But the other
Yeah,
thing I did want to say about San Diego is I noticed. So I heard like they were talking about how venues grow. Like San Diego has grown so far out, it's literally end to end now.
yeah.
You can't grow it anymore unless
It
you go
can't
up.
grow any bigger. Yeah,
Yeah, and there's rumors I heard of them wanting to move it to LA for a bigger convention hall.
yeah.
But then also the other thing was a lot of people said we won't be there if you do that because San
It's LA.
Diego's yeah, it's LA. LA's
Yeah.
disgusting. Um, it's too hot. Okay,
Yeah,
so
San Diego's actually nice in the summertime. It's the weirdest city in
it's the
Southern
night.
California
It's like
because
it
it's
was
next to
80
the mountains
degrees.
and it traps the air from the Pacific,
Yeah,
and it creates lower temperatures in the middle of summer. And there's no other city in Southern California that offers that.
I was
Because
gonna say
I mean,
that's
I've
kind
been
of
to
like
San
San
Diego Comic Con
Francisco,
and it's
sort of.
been in the 70s, during the day. That's better than it is at Gen Con in Indiana. I mean, it's crazy.
you
That's
can walk
wild.
around in jeans on and you'll be fine.
Yeah,
Um,
you move it to LA, all of a sudden it's just a sweaty mess. Nobody wants to do that.
I feel like that if they moved to LA, that's when I'd be like, I'm good, I'm out. You know, because fuck LA.
You get more movie directors coming out, but that's going to be about the only
Whatever.
difference.
I had a guy last year who was like, can't remember if he was like a Power Ranger, and he was just like, I love your stuff. I'd like to turn this into a movie. And I'm like, sure, man. But it felt a little bit like he was trying to steal my ideas instead. So I was just like, this stuff's all copyright and trademark, just so you know. And he's like, oh, yeah, I got you. And I was like,
that's how you know he was a real producer then. Yeah.
I was like, just so you know, like, don't steal my ideas.
Yeah, but they do anyway. Is the point I'm getting.
I mean, I got a good lawyer. I'll send Seth after them, you know. But so we're a little over time. So I mean, I don't know if you really want to. Should we do our little bit at the end here, where I talk about?
Just real quick.
Sure.
The usual show and tell.
The show and tell. What I was going to show was this. I picked this up randomly. I know how to play Magic, but you know my cousins don't, and my wife doesn't. So I picked this up.
Is this like a beginner set? What is this?
It's like a beginner set. Yeah, it literally comes with 5 decks, and you just play. You know, you pick one, and then it's a real easy way to learn how to play the game and the mechanics of the game, and it's I don't know how to describe it. It's not as like if you play Commander with your friends, you feel like you don't know shit if you don't know what you're doing. Obviously, right?
It can be very complex and very cutthroat.
So
and
this is not.
If you simplify the core mechanics of the game, it's much easier to play and learn.
So like exactly what it says, free for all, an epic battle between you and your friends. It's like each game will probably take about 30 minutes, and it's a fast way to learn how to play.
Nice.
I got it on purpose because I was just like, hey, maybe we can all. Not telling you guys to go invest in Commander decks, but it'd be fun to play just some. I just wanted to get back into some Magic, man. I'm like playing arena with my friend.
Casual play at least.
I can't remember the last time I played Commander, and I played once or twice with Andrew, and he's so good. I was just like, I don't know if I want to play right now. not sides, Andrew Thompson.
No,
Andrew
not
Thompson,
me. I have no idea how Magic plays.
I got one hit on Andrew with his own deck, and I was just like, no shutout. You know, like. So that's what I got. I guess I could show this really quick too. I rarely buy books at San Diego, but I picked up this awesome landscapes book.
Oh, nice.
This artist's name is Raphael Lacoste, and it's all like,
he's
cool ass landscapes, man. Look at this one.
Yeah, he's a really good artist.
And then just one more art book. This artist goes by Drizzle. Oh, I'm sorry. This artist's name is Moon. The book is called Drizzle. It's got all these like cool little drawings on the inside. That's a double-sided one. See?
No, it looks almost like sketchbook pages.
The camera isn't doing the colors justice, but you know me, I like color. These colors are popping off this page, and I was just like, that's the only 2 books I bought the whole time. So
nice.
That's it. That's all I got.
Jason, you got anything show and tell?
Well, I mean, the only new thing that I've been into lately is Diablo 4, and because games don't come in physical versions anymore, I'm just gonna say, people have probably seen it anyway.
I've been thinking about picking that up. I don't know if I have time to play it. Are you playing it on like Xbox?
I mean, no, I'm playing it on PC, like an adult.
Oh wow!
Wow.
Dick.
I've only ever known this game. I can't.
Well, that's just where
Diablo on console.
But I guess. Well, I mean, it's wherever your BattleNet account is located. Basically, is all that matters. You can log into it from anywhere, but it's just easy enough to get into. But no, I was going to say though, like you can play it for 20 minutes, and it's not that big a deal. Compared to a lot of video games, it's pretty easy to get in and out and enjoy yourself. Yeah. I mean, it's the same game that everybody has played before anyway. It's you just click a whole bunch and do that.
I've been playing Final Fantasy 14 on Monday nights with my friends for like an hour. 2 of my friends just to catch up. It's more like a catch up call / let's teach Allen how to play Final Fantasy 14. Right. I don't play on PC as much, so the keyboard and mouse function. Just this Monday, we played on Tuesday this week. I just discovered that if I press down on the trackball of my mouse, the character will just keep running. And I was just like, what the fuck? And they're like, you just sorted that out. I'm like, well, you didn't tell me. I didn't know it was a thing.
Yeah, auto.
WASD is fucking hard for me, man. Like, it's not.
To be fair, like, I never had a problem with it when I was younger, but now it's like, oh my god.
Yeah, when I was younger, my brain could process that faster. As an adult, I'm like,
I can process it just fine, but like my hand is like, no,
I'm spoiled with the controllers.
We are on Photoshop, son. We're not doing this with WASD anymore.
I mean, you know, the second I started playing consoles, I never realized I should keep playing PC. Consoles seem so nice, you know, and apparently nothing good runs on a console these days. So
No, there's
Diablo,
plenty of good stuff.
Diablo does look really good. The cinematics for it look amazing. So
Yeah, the graphics for the game entirely are just so impressive. I mean, it's almost tragic as an artist when you're walking through this dungeon and there's this incredible like vista of lava or something, and it's got so much detail, and like this door is carved like with the level of detail of some giant cathedral in Italy. Like it's incredible the amount of work they put into this game visually, and it's stuff that people are just going to run by in 5 to 10 seconds and go,
yeah,
"That looked cool." And it's just like,
right.
as an artist, it's almost painful to appreciate that level of craftsmanship on something that is getting that little visibility.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's really impressive. I mean, it really is kind of amazing
That's
that they
like
I
went
was
through that.
with Final
I
Fantasy. I
was
find myself taking screenshots. I'd be like, "Oh,
Mhm.
this looks great." Screenshot, you know, and
Yeah.
but my friends are
I
like,
was
"Can you just play the game?"
And you just play.
I was looking at a material artist on ArtStation that he did, or they did like a lot of the material work for Diablo 4. And man,
Oh yeah.
even just looking at those where it's just like they just had like their little like 2 meter square showing like what the material was applied, and then they also had like the ball that substance
Right.
designer creates and all that. Just even that alone, it's like Jesus Christ, this looks really good. Especially knowing for myself what that entails, especially because like substance designer is just basically just math, and you have to figure out how to make the math turn from gobbledygook into something that's actually coherent and also appealing is
I mean,
astounding to me when
that's
I
the
see
science
someone do
behind
that
that.
really good.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
like,
it's
yeah, no,
they've
I mean,
got
like, compared to like Photoshop, where it's like you just draw a little, like that's to me, that's not science, or that's like not a mystery to me. But I see people do stuff in substance designer where it's like, yeah, you take this like circle, we're gonna blur it a little on this side, and then we're gonna cut into it, and then all this other stuff. And 100 steps later, it's now like muddy water,
Right.
and it looks like muddy water,
Or the
even though it's
scales of
like
a dragon,
yeah, yeah.
and you're like,
So that
"Great."
that kind of stuff is
incredible.
like crazy to me.
That dude got paid pennies for that too.
Yeah.
Um,
Probably all things considered.
do you have anything?
I've been playing no, I'm not gonna mention Dave the Diver again.
If you
No,
mention David Diver, I'm driving to Florida to kick your ass.
no, 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 no.
Seriously.
We've been actually rewatching Dragon Ball Z Kai because my kid
Cool.
has gotten interested in it, so we're like, oh, we'll put it on for
They
you and
had a
see
cool
see
thing
what
at
you
San
think.
Diego for Dragon Ball. A friend of ours, he had to run around and collect 7 pins. And
Yeah,
then they gave you the Dragon Ball what do they call it that people like to stick to their badges? The banner or whatever. You know, you see like Gen Con, you see like a whole like a tie of them. You know what I'm talking
The
oh,
about?
okay,
ribbons.
yes,
The
yeah.
ribbons, yeah, yeah. So the specific Dragon Ball ribbon you can't get until you find all 7 pins around the show. And he did it.
Oh wow.
It's pretty
Oh,
Oh
that's
damn.
impressive.
cool. That's
And
cool.
then somewhere along the way, they were giving away free like sweatbands, and I was like, I don't need this, so I gave it to him, and he was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah,
I'm like, "Yeah, you're more excited about this than I am. Good luck with that."
yeah. No,
Um,
we've been
Yeah.
watching it. Great fun. My daughter is asking me when Vegeta is going to be a good guy yet, because like we just finished the Saiyan saga, and she's like, when is he going to stop being a bad guy? And it's like, you gotta wait. You gotta wait, kiddo.
he's got a character arc. He's got to go through it. Try
Yeah, no,
explaining
she
that
she
one.
she just she heard it from like my wife, like, because my wife's a huge Vegeta fan. She's like, she told her, I think early on, she's like, oh, he's a good guy, even though he's doing bad stuff right now. He's gonna be a good guy. In her head, she's like, well, when is he gonna be a good guy? Because I just saw him kill a person.
Right?
This isn't good
He
yet.
just murdered all those people.
Yeah,
Yeah. Can you come back from that? Mm. All right. So we got to wrap this up. We're an hour and a half in.
yeah, yeah.
So
So then, real quick, Jason, where can we find you on the web?
Well, it's my website that I've had for pretty much my whole career now is jaestudio.com. And then all the social media places that you can find on that site are the places where I actually put my new work. So I recommend that if you actually want to see.
you have a
Very
newsletter there too, I assume.
yeah.
I do when I remember, which is almost never.
I meant like,
But
do you have a newsletter sign up? Yes, right?
oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, when you remember to post on your newsletter? I got you.
Yeah.
Once a month, man. Once a month. That's how you get
Yeah,
people
sounds
to put
easy.
you in spam. Hey, man, that's how you go to spam really quick.
Alan, where can we find you on the internet?
Alan Panakal. You can go to AllenPanakal.com or ancientones.net. Alan Panakal Art everywhere on socials except TikTok.
Mhm.
One day I'll
And then
find that
you
guy.
can find both of them at shows. You guys will both be at Gen Con next,
We'll
correct?
both be at Gen Con
Yeah.
next week. We're actually right
Oh,
next to
and,
each other.
And then you'll both be at Dragon
Yeah.
Con after that?
Yeah, Dragon Con, we're 5 rows apart.
Very
We're
cool.
literally in the same floor. Jason is right in the front when you walk in, next to the Argyles, and then I'm 5 rows in corner
Nice.
spots. So like, we do really well at both those shows. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah,
Very cool.
2 best shows of the year, man.
Yeah, I mean, if I just did those 2 shows every year, I think I'd be okay. But San Diego's too fun to say no to. So
Yeah, but you also
And-
say you go to that more for networking than sales itself.
yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I did well this year, so I can't complain.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
I was
mean, it's good.
exhausted.
Yeah, like having both of them is also really good. But yeah, I remember you saying like you like to go to that one for networking first, and then sales.
Having the having the presence there, having your face there, building the brand is important. Then you can move forward from there.
Yeah.
And, all right, Andrew,
And,
where do we find your stuff?
asidesart.com or patreon.com/asidesart. Sign up for the newsletter, sign up for the Patreon, whichever one.
Man, I gotta clean my Patreon up someday. See, I've thought about cleaning up the Patreon, but then I had a thought about just turning my Discord into a paid platform, the Ancient Ones Discord, because you can do that now. But that requires time.
Really?
Yeah, I'm always like, I'll do it after Dragon Con. I'll work on all this stuff. My first goal, just so you know, after Dragon Con, since I have a break between Dragon and LuxCon, is to clean the studio over here because there's just a bunch of books on the floor and no shelves on the wall.
It's going to be perpetually messy.
It's not going to happen. Like,
Only gonna get
I
worse,
still haven't
too, man.
replaced my Cintiq. I have pulled the plug and put it back in and tweaked it. It's a hard reset each time to get the colors back. I have a Huion sitting right here. I just haven't set it up yet.
Post Dragon Con, you're gonna have a printer perched on your windowsill, like
right
it's
here.
an AC unit.
Yeah. That thing's gonna dump on someone. I'm just waiting. But yeah. All right, I'm gonna take us offline. Our next guest will probably be
we might have another show one, like another one focused on like conventions.
Specifically Gen Con, because what I'd like to do is Kurum and Jason Smith and probably Jason Engle here. What I'd like to do is get those 2 guys on because their first time at Gen Con is this year. I want to get their perspective because like mine was so long ago and I didn't record any of my feelings afterwards. But
oh yeah, no, we should
be
do that. You and I can laugh at their tears, and
yes,
that can be the theme of the show.
We'll be like, yeah,
saying, "I can't believe I made it through," and we'll be like, "Yeah, we can't believe you made it through either."
I mean, I'm waiting for day 1 where they just have to go get their stuff and bring it into the floor.
Oh yeah,
like they're not mentally prepared for that step because I was like marshalling yard. You can't get on the floor without the marshalling yard, unless you're like Jason and you just wheel stuff in.
Yeah, well,
yeah, well, not all of us can be rock stars. All right, hang on, I'm gonna take us offline.
Well, this is fun.
Yeah, thanks for
joining us. I appreciate it. Not in your bathroom this time, so.
It's not my bathroom last time.
Oh, okay, sorry.